One expulsion of a United Nations official from Sri Lanka might be an anomaly. A second UN official being threatened with expulsion might seem a coincidence. But now that a third is awaiting deportation, one wonders if a trend is developing. Earlier this month, we told you that UNICEF's spokesperson in Colombo was being asked to leave the country. James Elder is accused of having given false information to the media while Sri Lanka was in its final stages of civil war with the LTTE, or Tamil Tiger rebels. Since the news of Mr. Elder's expulsion broke, troubles with other UN officials have come to light. One has been expelled for distributing satellite images of the war zone. Another was threatened with expulsion but negotiated to stay. The person responsible for all this is Sri Lanka's former Foreign Secretary, Palitha Kohona. Former because Dr. Kohona has just been appointed the permanent representative for Sri Lanka to the United Nations in New York. And that's where we reached him.
Ambassador Kohona, the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon has been critical of how Sri Lanka is treating Tamil civilians since the end of the war. Are you hearing those criticisms since you have arrived at the UN?
Let me say two things. The Secretary-General has not said anything to that effect. And then, of course, Sri Lanka's vast majority of Tamil civilians of Sri Lanka live in the south amongst the Sinhala population, 54% in fact. And there has been no criticism of the way, by anybody in fact, of the way those people are treated. I assume you're talking about the 300,000 or approximately 300,000 civilians who were herded by the LTT as a human shield and as hostages and driven into a small area in the northeast of the country. These people were rescued by the Sri Lankan security forces, and they are being looked after in camps at the moment. It's only 4 months since the end of the conflict, when the LTT was completely destroyed. I do not know what these critics expect in a 4-month period to deal with such a large crowd. Is a challenge to anybody.
But
let me, if you wouldn't mind, Carol, you remember how long it took to resettle those who were displaced after Katrina. It took years. Everyone has shelter. There's nobody sitting under a tree or under a ditch or in a ditch. Everybody gets 3 meals a day. There is health care and even educational facilities for children. I'm not suggesting by any stretch of imagination that these people have the best in the world. They don't. This is not the Waldorf. This is not the Sheraton or the Hilton. This is a refugee camp. And we're doing our best, given that we are a third world country, we are a poor country, we're doing our best to look after these people. They're our people, and it's our obligation to look after them.
But you have been highly criticized for how you've been handling those 300,000, and that is specifically the group that we're speaking about, and which Ban Ki-moon has talked to you about. You had a 45-minute meeting with him when he received your appointment to the UN. Normally it's a 5-minute formality. He must have said something to you about the conditions those 300,000 people are living under in those camps.
I can speak with authority about the conditions under which they live because I have been to those camps. Many of the people who level criticisms against us have no idea as to what is going on in those camps. It is so easy to criticize Sri Lanka for what it has done, but I would like to challenge anybody to show me a situation where such a large number have been looked after so well.
Well, people have tried to challenge, but the problem is that you have given extremely limited access to journalists, to independent verifiers, to anyone who wants to review the situation in the camps, both the situation for those Tamil civilians during the conflict and after, the ones who are seeking help. You have limited, and you specifically, sir, are the person who has limited access to those who would review those situations. If you're so confident of the conditions, why don't you give us access to them?
This is a little exaggeration. At the moment, almost every single UN agency in the country is present in the camps. This is not limited. They're there in number. 54 NGOs, international NGOs included, are in the camps. So where does this allegation of limited access come from?
Well, it might come from the fact that you have ordered the expulsion and the removal, the cancellation of visas of key members of the United Nations who were in those camps, who told the world that people there were living in unimaginable hell, which was one of the quotes from James Elder, who's one of the people that you are expelling from your country. That perhaps that's where the criticism comes from, is when you're throwing people out who say things you don't like.
Carol, that's only one individual from amongst dozens, maybe hundreds of international civil servants who are present in those camps. And one thing I know for certainty, having worked at the UN, is that a UN civil servant has no business getting involved in domestic politics or publicly getting involved in a spat with the host government. I think this is just an outrageous thing to have done, for him to have done. There are others, hundreds of them, in those camps, and they continue with their business unimpeded.
There are 3 people, in fact, that you are expelling. They are key people, senior people, and Ban Ki-moon has said that they had any right to speak out about those conditions as part of their mandate of protecting civilians and looking out for their well-being. To speak of the conditions,
has said anything of the sort, Carol.
He's defended those.
This is absolute rubbish. Ban Ki-moon has not said anything of the sort.
He has defended those men and saying that the UN.
He has defended them, but he has not said anything of that sort. And that is absolute rubbish.
He said that the UN has a responsibility to say what's going on.
The UN official has a mandate to discharge. UN officials do not go into countries with a view to criticizing host governments. They are there to help. They are there to work with host governments, not to criticize them in public.
The people who criticize what your government did, how it prosecuted that war, have also criticized equally strenuously what the Tamil Tigers did to those civilians, treating them as human shields. But both sides are being questioned for war crimes and culpability in war crimes, including you personally. You were also considered.
Personally, how did I get involved?
Because you were involved in that government. That's enough for a war crimes investigation.
I suppose if that is the criterion which you apply, everybody working for the Canadian government should be accused of committing war crimes in Afghanistan.
Those who are senior members involved in prosecuting the war would be.
The Canadian government would be culpable of war crimes in Afghanistan.
What's going to happen then with James Elder? Is he going to be allowed to stay in Sri Lanka?
That is not a decision for me to make. I am only an ambassador. The decision on immigration is for the Director General of Immigration to deal with.
Ambassador Kohona, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Carol.
Palitha Kohona is Sri Lanka's new permanent representative to the United Nations. We reached him in New York City.